Hello and welcome everyone. This is actually the second live of the third season of After Produit. As you can hear it, this is the absolute first time we are doing it in English. So sorry for our bad accents. We'll try to do our best. But yes, first time in English because we do have some international guests. I'll come back to that in a minute. Because today I will be hosting this After Produit with my colleague Jean. How are you, Jean?
Nice and you?
I'm really good.
Hello everyone.
Anything to add?
No.
No, not for now.
Not for now.
And of course, After Produit would be absolutely nothing without a tremendous guest. And today we are welcoming two guests. First, let's start with Lemay, product leader, author, and now partner at Sudden Compass. And with Sudden Compass, you've been working at Spotify, Audible, Mailchimp, and also Google. And our second guest, Sébastien Magoutier, Chief Product Officer at Decathlon. And you used to work at Google. You've been working at Google for several years in the past. Welcome to you both. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I appreciate you accommodating my limited language skills and speaking in English tonight.
We are practicing English. Thanks to you.
And I'm very good, very happy to be here and talk about product with Matt. Super happy about that.
Great. Let's talk a bit more about you. Could you briefly introduce yourselves? Let's give you 5 minutes each to just present you. And if you have any trivia information about yourselves, feel free to give it.
I can start. Okay,
Please.
so I'm Sébastien Magoutier. So I'm currently Chief Product Officer at Decathlon. Started 2.5 years ago. Today, Decathlon, it's a much larger digital company than people expect. It's more than 2,000 people working in the digital team. We have a pretty wide range of products from conception. So we create digital product for our conceptors, the engineers and designers who are building the Decathlon product, surfboards, soccer balls, tents, and all. We have a digital commerce platform that's pretty big. That's over 3 billion euro right now. And we are definitely also entering into the sport practices with a few applications, such as Decathlon Coach, Decathlon Outdoor. So a pretty wide range of product. And prior to that, I mainly worked at Google for 13 years, 9 of which in California. I also had a couple of experience in startups. I work in a seeded startup music tech company.
Nice.
And in a Series B SaaS B2B company as well. And it was mostly around various product roles. We can talk about that a bit later, but product, but also product marketing as well, which I'm very keen on. Maybe one fun fact, I think at Decathlon we always introduce ourselves with our sport passion or passion sport, and mine is rugby that I've played competitively for a while. I'm pretty keen on rugby too.
And the World Cup is coming.
Yes, it's coming and in France, so it's super exciting for the rugby community.
Will you be attending one of the games?
Yes, I will definitely, yes.
Nice. And just to introduce Decathlon, we might have some people that don't know what is Decathlon.
Sure.
We do know it, Decathlon in France, obviously, but if you could introduce Decathlon.
Yes, of course, obviously. So Decathlon is a sport retailer and a sport conceptor. So first of all, we conceive in over 80 sports. So various goods. We have over 2,600 designers, engineers that are building Decathlon products in a wide range of products. From team sports, from outdoor, from bicycles. Decathlon is the number one seller of bicycle in France, in Europe, and one of the top one in the world. But it's also a retailer. We have our own stores in over 60 countries. We have 2,000 stores in 60 countries. So that's what Decathlon is about. And our mission is to make the benefit of sport accessible to the many. So there's always this accessibility in terms of innovation. You may know the easy breath masks or the 2-second tent, which are aimed at making it much easier for people to enjoy the outdoor and enjoy sports. But also accessibility in terms of price. Our mission is to make it available for everyone. So we have it's very core to us to make sure that everyone can afford sports and introduce the benefit of sports in their lives.
Yeah, really strong brand in France, Decathlon. Yes. I hope in other countries. Matt, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm Matt Lemay. I'm trying to think where to start. So I was a professional musician many lifetimes ago in a touring band into and out of college. I moved back in with my mom in New York City. I realized I wanted to move out of my mom's apartment in New York City and that it was time for me to get a grown-up job. And I was going to go into advertising or tech. I had been building websites for record labels in my spare time. I actually built a digital promo delivery system for my band because we didn't have the budget to hire a publicist.
Of course.
So I just coded a digital promo delivery system, which was quite handy. And I learned quickly that I did not necessarily have the technical chops to be an engineer, but I found out that there was this thing called product management, where you could work with and around engineers without necessarily having the skills of an engineer oneself. And this was really exciting to me because I always liked the collaborative aspect the most. I always liked the ability to work with people and create something together. I think that was part of why I was so drawn to being a musician as well. You know, it's the collective realization of a vision and that ability to take something in your head and watch it change and grow and get better as other people shape it. And so I started at Bitly, the link shortener in New York. That was my first product job. I was there for 3 years, going from an API evangelist from a quasi-technical role to head of consumer product. And I just fell in love with the work. I fell in love with product management. But during those 3 years, I still felt like I was missing something because I had read about all these frameworks and all these different methods for doing things. And none of them really applied to what I did. I remember my first day at Bitly, I said, oh, well, what's our product development process? And they were like, oh, a process? We just, we figure it out. And I was like, oh, but if I'm supposed to be in charge of the process and there's no process, what do I do all day? How do I do this? And I think it took me a couple of years after that particular role to realize that every organization is a mess when it comes to product, and that's okay. I kind of fell in love with the mess. And over the last 10 years, a lot of my work has been about reclaiming the mess and finding joy in the mess and helping reassure people like, look, just because your company doesn't do product the right way doesn't mean that you can't do product well. Nobody really does product the right way. Even the companies you read about who publish case studies about how they do product the right way, they have their constraints, they have their challenges, they have their messes to deal with. So a lot of my work for the last 8 years has been going into organizations and really helping them try to focus on the most pressing challenges they have within their constraints, within their reality, and just really focus people and get them revved up towards solving those problems. So that's why I wrote Product Management in Practice, because I felt that there was not a lot of material out there that addressed the reality of product management. And it was important to me to have the book that I wish somebody had given to me on day one, saying
the shortcut,
saying, hey, it's okay. Really just saying like, you're not bad at this job if everything is on fire all the time. That's okay. Doesn't mean you're bad at this. There's still good work for you to do. So I would say that's my passion sport. That's as close to product management is as close to a sport as I have these days.
And you said you used to be a musician. You're not anymore a musician?
Not professionally. I actually just put out a record with a friend of mine that came out.
What kind of style?
It's like a weird instrumental rock record. So we made this record when we were both living in quarantine in Portland, Oregon. We lived 5 blocks from each other, but we couldn't see each other. So we would send each other files back and forth. And I had a whole recording studio with drums and guitars, and he had a synthesizer studio and a keyboard. He's a really talented keyboard player. So we just sent stuff back and forth in the dead of night in the depths of our depression and loneliness. And it got really weird, but I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Share it with the
exactly.
With the
Connection, right? You find those opportunities to connect with someone else, and they keep you alive.
Nice. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Sébastien. Jean, I have one question for you first. What are we going to do today?
I will share with you the agenda. So we will talk with you, Matt, Sébastien, tonight about the product culture also. We will share tips and also try to win a product training during the Agile quiz. So get ready in the middle of the episode for the quiz. You will just need your smartphone to participate, and the link will be shared in the Twitch chat. So first of all, let's start. And let's start with the icebreaker, so jingle.
And we are back. Thank you for the jingle. We've called this icebreaker best day ever, but the question is, can you tell us about your worst day as a product manager? And of course, please explain us why you consider it to be the worst day ever as a PM in your life.
Oh, I'm really excited to answer this one. So I was working for a company as a product manager, and we had a new CEO who would kind of put me in charge of putting together a unified roadmap for the company. And I did everything right. I went to each stakeholder, I got their input, we crafted a plan which wasn't terribly exciting, but it was the right thing to do. It incorporated everybody's opinion. It wasn't too watered down. And I presented it, and everybody was kind of like, yeah, sure, that's fine. We've all seen this already, which again is a good sign, right? If everybody's already seen it, it shouldn't be a big aha moment. But this new CEO pulled me aside afterwards and he said, you know, Matt, you're such a creative person. Is that the most creative vision you can come up with? Like, surely there's something more exciting. I want to see just what your idea would be. And what I should have said was, you know, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I think it's really important that all of the stakeholders of the company are on the same page, and I want to honor their commitments to this. I did not do that. Instead, I said, hell yeah, I'll come back next week and present it to the whole executive committee. So I show up the next week. I'm like really excited. Got the audience of the whole executive committee, and I'm like, all right. So you may have seen my boring plan last week, but now I'm going to let you in on the really good stuff. And immediately one person goes, wait, what the hell is this? We all committed to this. What are you doing? And I go, oh no, but wait until, you know, you see this is going to be a chance for us to really innovate. And I start kind of sputtering, and I start presenting, and one by one, more and more people in the room are going, what? And they all turn to the CEO. Everyone one by one is just turning to the CEO. And the CEO turns to me and says, Matt, what are you doing? I never asked for this. This is terrible. Why? What's wrong with you that you would think this is the right thing to do? And I sat there with my mouth open, fighting back tears. And that CEO pulled me aside later and said, hey, sorry, that was tight. Thanks for letting me get away with that, because I was just up against, you understand, I was in a tight corner there.
He was both bad and honest.
It was bad and honest, and I appreciated that honesty in a sense. But, you know, the two lessons I learned that day were, number one, don't bring a big surprise to a big meeting. And number two, don't assume that you have air cover from a single person, because executive whims can change very quickly. And if the tide turns against you, it's very rare that you're going to be able to withstand that and turn it in your favor. So emotionally, one of the worst days for me ever as a person and as a product manager, but I feel like also one of the days with the most dense and compact and aggressive learning.
Yeah. Great story.
Yeah,
we have quite a challenger. Sébastien, can you tap it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminded me of a story, including a CEO as well in a tech company. I assume it was a tech company. So I recently joined that tech company, and we were going from a single product to a multi-product company. So we had a couple of options, 2-3 options to go for the next product. And I decided to bring up the product approach, where I looked at, you know, market analysis, UX research, and I had the whole team from design to engineering to work on this proposal to say, okay, this is the option we should go for. So we worked tirelessly for weeks on end, trying to build up this plan that we would show up to the CEO, but also to the board. And the day we show up, so, you know, put a lot of pressure on the team. We were convinced, we had data backing us up, we had everything. So we present that, take a while. We present all the research that we have done. We're very sure about our plan. And at the very end of the meeting, the CEO said, well, nah, we're not gonna do that. And I said, okay, fine. So why? Well, just because. I don't want to do it. I want to do this. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. So, okay, fine, but can you tell us more? Because, you know, like, what's the reason behind? And no reasons were given. What I learned from that is that in a small tech startup, where the CEO, product and CEO roles are confused when you're a tech startup that has a single product, because technically you're owning what the company is selling entirely almost. So the relationship between the CEO, especially the smaller the scale, the relationship between CPO or whoever, like the highest rank on product, or for all product managers for that matter, and the relationship with the CEO are super important. So every time I have friends who are, looking for a jobs in a startup and willing to get, take a step to go to a smaller startup. I say, well, the thing you need to nail, my friend, is really understand that CEO, understand his fear or her fear, like what they want, what their drive is, because otherwise it can make your life a nightmare. Because all decisions that you want to make, like they're so attached, they've built that with their blood and tears. So any product decision is a company-wide decision, essentially. So I learned a lot from that experience. I think I underestimated when I interviewed for that company, like the impact or the role that CEO can have, and I don't trust that I would have the reign to make product decisions when I didn't. That was a very bad day, but also a great learning experience, to be honest.
And I think it's a good idea of a topic for an incoming show. The specific relation between the PMs or the head of PMs and the CEOs, especially in small companies, which, as you explained, can be an issue when it's not prepared and decided. Thanks to both of you. There is a question from Violette in the chat. We need to know, where is that shirt from, Matt?
It is from Dries van Noten.
Oh. Violette, you have your answer?
Merci. It's from the Dries van Noten shop right here in Paris.
Thank you. Jean?
Yeah, we will start for the jingle. Okay, next, so we will now talk about our main topic is bringing product culture to legacy organization. So first of all, Matt, what is a product culture for you?
I'm so glad that that's the first question you asked, because that's the first question I ask a company I work with. I think it's very easy for companies to want something greatly without knowing what it is they want. I've worked with a lot of companies who say, we want Agile, or we want product mindset, or we tried Agile and it didn't work, so now we want design thinking. And the thing I keep coming back to them with is, okay, what are the specific challenges you're facing? What would a better outcome be? And what stopped you from getting there? Like, what has actually stopped you from getting where you want to be? And I've been surprised at how often folks don't really have a good answer to that question. And I've been through a lot of transformations with companies where the problems that they actually need to solve for and the solutions that they implement have little, if anything, to do with each other. To give you an example, I worked with a bank a long time ago that was really struggling with complexity. They had too many teams doing too many different things. And as with a lot of complex organizations, the most meaningful things they could do were the things that involved a lot of different teams' work. So what did they do? They implemented a scaled Agile transformation where they hired 100 trainers and had them train every team. All the business analysts became product owners. And then they brought me in because the product owners didn't know what their jobs were anymore. They said, well, what does it mean to be a product? And they said, well, we don't know. The consultants told us that we need to have product owners. So now you're product owners. Everything's fixed. So I think the real challenge is that, to me, at its best, kind of along with what Sébastien was saying, like a good product culture is a culture where you're paying attention to reality. You're paying attention to the users, to the market. It's a culture where you have that feedback loop between yourself and the people you're building for, always active and always centered and always short, close, and tangible.
So if you have just 3 success criteria regarding the product culture, or in order to have the good product culture, what is the 3 success criteria you to share with us?
My number one, Teresa Torres' definition of continuous discovery is so smart, which is continuous touch points by the product team with customers once a week. And that's it. I love it because it's so tactical. It's not saying you have to think this way and figure out. It's just like, are you actually talking to your customers once a week? And it blows my mind on LinkedIn whenever Teresa posts something about that. There'll always be like 50 people being like, well, we can't do that on our team for these reasons. And it's like, all right, then what do you think is going to happen? If you are building a product, your success or failure is determined by your customers, not by the brilliance of your CEO, not by the frameworks you implement. It's the people and markets you're building for who determine whether or not your company will exist in a year. And if you can't find the time to learn from those people once a week, if that's too much time, then what are you doing with your time? Then your priorities are so out of whack that everything else is going to be really, really hard to do. So to me, that's kind of the number one thing is not just are you making the time, but do you recognize why you have to make that time? Do you understand that your success or failure is not just about how smart you are or how cool or how innovative you are, but about your ability to continuously learn and improve and meet the needs of people who are themselves continuously changing and learning and going through different things. So that to me is the big one. The other one I'll say, so much of, and I talked about this a little bit before, so many of the most important things for product organizations, especially large product organizations to do, are about subtracting and streamlining, not just adding more features. And that is usually the hardest work to do. I've worked with a lot of companies where there'll be something really obvious. Like when I was working with MailChimp, the most impactful thing we did was deleting one step from the checkout flow. And credit to their CPO, Natalia Williams, who wrote the foreword for my book, because she really encouraged the team. She was like, how many of you are using the product? People were like, she's like, no, use the product. I want you all to be living and breathing in this product. I want you to be experiencing what's painful for you. And the realization that people came to was, we don't need to just add a bunch more features. We need to make this a more streamlined, more facilitated experience. We need to take things out and help people get to where they're trying to get faster and more efficiently. So I think that ability to look at the entirety of the product, to think in terms of user goals and user journeys, rather than in terms of features and widgets and screens, that to me is sort of the highest mark of a product organization, when they can look across the entire product and say, okay, these might be the most difficult things to change, but they are the points of highest leverage in the experience. And we are going to prioritize these, even if they don't fit neatly into any one team's work. We're going to make sure that we prioritize the things that matter most to our customers, regardless of whether they fit neatly into the way we've structured our organization. I think those are the two things.
Okay,
that
just
are most
two
important
things.
to me.
Thank you, Matt. And Sébastien, what makes Decathlon product culture different?
I don't know if we have a different product culture. I think we're trying to get there, right? Like this is an effort for a company like Decathlon. Digital as not being native. We are learning it on the way. So to piggyback on what Matt said, what we're trying to look are signs, like symptoms that our culture is growing. And agree with you, like more often than not, before it used to be a lot of like, okay, we're going to introduce this new methodology or this new framework, and then we can label ourselves product. But that's not the end of it. These are just enablers. These are just methods that helps you get there. But to me, like what I'm trying to look for now in terms of symptoms are user centricity, definitely. So are the teams spending time with their users? Are they obsessed with their users? And what's interesting is that maybe there is something that sets Decathlon apart. Decathlon has been doing this, by the way, for 40 years on physical product. They're obsessed with their users. Like if you think about the mask, the tents, all the different innovation, they're made because they have centers of consumption in the middle of the practice. So in the Alps, for mountaineering, in the southwest of France for water sports, and they're just living and breathing with their users every day. If you go to Hendaye in the southwest of France, where you can just go paddle directly from the office, the people who are designing the snorkeling and the paddle gear, they snorkel and they paddle every week. There's a club that is going out of their office every week. So they are living with their users. We're slowly bringing that to our digital world, because at the end of the day, this is the same thing. A second symptom is business, because I agree with you, user centricity is important, but in the transformation mode, if you want to get investments, you have to think about business. You have to think about the outcome. You have to understand that this is driving money. Otherwise, you won't get the funding, because user goes to a certain way. But when you're not funded to just discover only, when you're funded to drive results, you have to think business. And to me, one of the biggest shifts that you can see is coming from I think you're using legacy in the name of this podcast. So if you're coming from a legacy perspective to like more like a product culture centric mode, you see the business changing. Before it used to be sort of, okay, you know, your line of expense in a business, you're investing, you know, we're putting money on IT. But when you start seeing the product team talking about business impact, about KPIs, about revenue, and they're starting to exchange with the business, challenging that with the business partners, that's another sign. And the other one, which is underlying of both, is data. Leveraging data every single day. Looking at what's happening, you know, looking at your users, of course, definitely qualitatively, but quantitatively, both from a business and user perspective. These are also symptoms that can tell you that, okay, you're going in the right direction. You have product teams that are driven by data and not by like, okay, my business partner told me to do so, or like I saw that and I just want to do the same thing. Like you get into this model of like experimentation as well. Experimenting is also important. So yeah, user, business driven data, I think. And what sets us apart, I think, is that we have this historical background of doing it for years for physical product, and we're sort of in the process of bringing that mentality. I have actually a specific project I'm dreaming of creating sort of paths between a product manager and what we call a chef de produit. Right now this title only exists in French, but I could be a product manager for physical product. But at the end of the day, their job is really similar. They work with engineers, with designers, you know, like the same triptych that you would find in product, and their obsession is user. How can I improve my product? The cycles are completely different. That's the main difference, right? But at the end, the job is very similar.
I used to be a chef de produit in the telco business, and at one point in my career, my manager came to me and told me, from now on, you're a product owner. And I had to wait 1 year to be trained and to actually understand what is a product owner. But basically the work was the same. I had a lot of exchanges with the customers. I had to identify their pains and try to define a solution. And I agree that the biggest difference is the industrial time, which is different. It's not in days or weeks, it's months. But basically the work is the same, really interesting. And you mentioned the idea of data, of being close to your customer and using data for that. But can you measure the switch to the product culture in the company? And how would you do that?
It's a great question. I think one of the measurements that we're kind of thinking is the level of investment. It could be one indicator that, you know, you're sort of not putting money away into your IT team, but you're investing in digital as a force. So like your ratio of invest on your overall turnover, I think, is an indication of how much the company is starting to invest. I think also the resourcing in the measuring, you know, like the average, I think something I've used recently is the average number of designers we have per project, you know, to think like how important it is to bring UX research and the concept of your user experience into the conception. That's also an indicator of like, are we there or not? Maybe this is a couple to start.
Okay. Anything to add, Matt, on that?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth on this one because ultimately I think that, you know, per that point of business focus, right? Whatever your transformation is should serve the business. Like your business should be meeting its goals better with this more digital product-centered approach than it has with its old approaches. So I usually tell companies like, what are your goals as a business? Let's start there and see how we can get you on a path towards that. Now, those are lagging indicators, right? It's usually a while before you start to see those changes happen. But again, I don't want to wind up in that situation like that bank I worked with, where they said our transformation was a success because we achieved 100% agile adoption because we changed everyone's titles and they didn't know why. I think there's risk in putting too many intermediate markers of success when at the end of the day, you know, my favorite definition of product management in general is from Melissa Perry's book, Escaping the Bill Trap, where she says that product managers are facilitating a value exchange between a business and its customers. And I think that ultimately you should be able to measure success in that value exchange. Are you exchanging more value? Is the business thriving? Are your customers happy? I think that any transformation ultimately needs to serve those top level business and customer goals. And if you get too fiddly in the way you measure those downstream, I think there's a risk of losing the bigger picture and getting off course.
Interesting. And you spoke about the notion of mess earlier in your introduction, and it's interesting because usually when people speak about culture, they mean structure. They want to have a framework. They want to have processes. And you mentioned mess, and you said, "Oh, it's okay to have some mess." And what I understand now is that it's okay to have some mess if the reason to be is to create value. As long as that's fine.
I think you need mess to create value. People are messy. Like, people by nature are messy, and markets made of people are messy, and teams made of people are messy. I think that it's very funny, right? Because on the one hand, we're trying to transition kind of away from this industrial age traditional way of working, but we're also installing these frameworks which are very mechanized, which don't really leave much room for human complexity, which say that people can work in this very predictable, very measurable way, and we'll measure their work this way, and we'll track this thing called velocity, and we'll do things in this very organized, structured way. And that's just not how people work. And I think it's sad to me that we keep having to relearn this lesson over and over again, that I think all roads will ultimately lead back to a mechanized command and control approach, because that's what businesses ultimately want on some level. Because wouldn't it be nice if we could just install a system and all the numbers go up forever and everybody's successful? But that's just not the reality of how things work. It's not who we are. And I think what you see is that in organizations that try to refuse the mess still operates, but the mess,
you have no control over it.
You have no control over it, exactly. And the people who figure out how to work around the system are successful, and the people who follow the rules of the system are usually unsuccessful, and then they get resentful, and the whole thing kind of collapses. Whereas organizations that are truly lowercase a agile, that can say, okay, if we need to spin up a team to solve this problem, who cares about the org chart? Like, let's get the 10 people together who can solve this problem and give them the structure and the goals and the resources they need to solve this problem. The folks who are able to look at that and say, look, all these structures we've made are made up things. We don't have to be too attached to them. These are all things that were made up by people trying to solve problems. Yes. But if we know what problem we're trying to solve, we need to be bold, and we need to be brave, and we need to be confident in letting ourselves create the structures we need to solve these particular problems for these particular people at these particular moments.
I want to piggyback on that, because for me, the idea of mess is a great way to get rid of bias. It's a great way to get rid of what you wouldn't allow yourself to discover if you're too structured. And I think you mentioned that earlier, but at the end of the day, what matters is you measure it. You measure what it does, the impact it has. You don't know what you don't know, so try stuff. Create an environment where people can be creative, can create, because this is what people do. And at the end of the day, the less of a structure you have in terms of the discovery and the terms of things that you're looking for, I think it opens up for way more opportunities to be creative, especially if you're in a challenger mode or if you want to innovate in new areas. But you have to have some kind of control, which is not the control of like putting boundaries, but more so measuring it, calculating it, trying to organize the mess towards a specific problem to solve. And I agree with you, most of times when you don't know the problem you're trying to solve, mess is just going to be endless and non-productive. But if you know your problem you want to solve, and you know how to measure how you're getting closer, then you can create as much mess as you want and not get it done.
Yes, if I may piggyback on that for a moment. So one thing I've been working with a lot of teams on doing lately is setting high altitude, high specificity goals. So high altitude as in like business critical metrics, like how many new users are you going to onboard? How much new revenue you're going to generate? And then getting really specific about it. Like, are you going to onboard 1,000 new users by the end of Q1, 10,000, 100? Are you going to bring in $10 million of revenue? And teams get really nervous when they're responsible for these things, but it also gives them freedom because they know what they're responsible for. And suddenly they have to get creative, right? They have to say like, okay, if we've got to do this. I was working with one team that was responsible for transitioning users from an old platform to a new platform. And I said, well, what are your goals? What's the problem? They're like, we're transitioning users from the old platform to the new platform. I said, okay, how many by when? They said, well, and I said, okay, no, that's not going to cut it, because you're never going to know if you were successful or not, right? You could onboard 1 and say, that's fine, or you could onboard 1,000 and say, that's great, when you could have done 10,000. So I said, how many? They said, well, we don't really know. And I said, all right, by the end of Q1, how many? They said, well, I said 10, 100, 1,000, or 10,000. And somebody said, gosh, if it's 10,000, then we really have to focus and we can't work on anything else. I said, congratulations, you just found your target.
Yeah.
It's going to be 10,000. They're like, well, but then when people come to us to build stuff, we're going to have to say, I was like, yes, you are going to have to say no, because the problem you're trying to solve is an important one that requires focused work. And if you think you can get this done, I'll support you. And they have a wonderful product leader who joined them on a call and said, if you think you can do this, I will support you, and I will make sure that I will support you when you say no to the other things you need to do. But I found that, yeah, when you can give a team a specific quantitative goal to hit and then say, we will support you in whatever you need to do to hit this goal, whatever experiments you need to run, whatever you need to do, whatever support you need from other teams, it makes people nervous, but I think it makes them nervous in a good way, because they can see the impact of what they're doing, and they're measuring their success again by the impact it's having on the business and the customers, not on how busy they are or how late they stayed at the office or how the CEO treated them when they did that last PowerPoint presentation. It gives them something really meaningful and specific to work
And
towards.
they were the one choosing their objective.
Yeah.
Which might be an issue in France usually, because traditional management in France is more about controlling and imposing the targets instead of, oh, okay, what's your target? You decide and we will support you, as you say. It's a nice difference, I guess, between the French culture and the rest of the world.
And we have a question on the chat for Klings. What is the biggest challenge for a non-digital native company as Decathlon to become a digital retail media company? And what are the North Star's pursuits?
So can you say it again?
What is the biggest challenge for non-digital native company as Decathlon to become a digital retail company?
That's a great question. So number one, I feel is definitely the culture. The culture of which most of digital is led by what we used to call IT teams. And there's a culture that was going one direction, which was IT is an expense. It's something I'm spending money on. I want an expense to be the lowest possible, right? That's how company works. You have entry and get out, and the things that got out of your bank account, you want to control it. So you have this culture, which means that the muscle, let's say, like if we simplify it to like a delivery discovery, right? The muscle that has been flexed for years has been on delivery. The muscle that have been flexed was mostly on like qualité, coût, délai, as we say, like the cost, how much it costs, when I'm going to be able to ship it, and is it stable enough? So you have to reshape the complete culture, where you have to sort of start having those teams to gain trust for the business counterpart to actually flex new muscles, the one of discovery, saying, okay, now you're going to be deciding, this, let's take the e-commerce platform, for instance, that is selling sports goods. We're going to try to find what is the best way to sell those products, or sell or rent, or like how can we make them available. So that's a big shift. And the shift is more on the culture. I think, again, it was mostly made in terms of methodologies, titles, changing those things. Well, at the end of the day, it's about where you put the gravity center of who makes the decision. How do you sort of challenge that? Challenge the habits. So first of all, change the culture. And then you have to bring all these people who are, actually they were all great. They're just that they haven't flexed those muscles yet, and they have to learn how to flex it. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is to try to gain trust from people who used to maybe making the decision, now that are part of the table, obviously, but I have to sort of free and to sort of integrate within the decision making people who are now digital, as we say, even though sometimes I have a hard relationship with this word, but they have to be part of the decision. They have to trust that they will do everything they can to do discovery, to understand their users, and to find the best delivery. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything to add, Matt?
Oh, I think that's a great point. I think that focus on decision making is so important, because culture can be such an ephemeral term.
Yeah.
But decision making is so important, and finding out how a team makes decisions, and if a team makes decisions. I mean, I think a lot of teams in traditional companies aren't used to making decisions at all. They're used to being told what to do, and then they report, but they don't decide. So getting folks who are used to just executing and reporting to actually make decisions and inform decisions is really challenging, and takes a lot of work and a lot of little moves. And it's yeah, I think that's a great point.
But it's scary too, because for teams that used to hustle up, okay, so we're telling you what to do, especially essentially, like I want this to be done by then, and I want this to be done at that price. If you change that and you say, okay, now you're going to be responsible, now you're going to be accountable for the results that you drive. This is daunting. This is so scary when you're not used to be driven this way. It's exhilarating, it's interesting, but teams have to learn how to take that accountability and drive it.
And how do you accompany this team to do so?
So there's a couple of things that we can do. First of all, again, I'm coming back to the concept of data of like, okay, first of all, you have to drive with your eyes open. And I think it's mainly one of the big issue is that when you were in this sort of legacy mode, I would say, you're not really driving with eyes open. You're not really looking at business impact. What you're looking at is that am I delivering the feature on time? Pretty much. I'm really simplifying it, but that's pretty much what it is. So then, okay, it's easy. But now, if you want to move into this mode, then you have to drive for something, for an outcome, for an objective, for something you want to reach. That will make everyone happy. Because if you reach your business goal, there's nothing else to say. How you got there is fine. So I think one of the best way to accompany it is to teach how to leverage data, how to leverage and to drive with eyes open. Another thing as well is the culture of experimentation, because it's impossible to hit the goal for the first strike.
Yes.
You have to fail. So let's fail, but let's fail with eyes open again. Let's fail, let's experiment and bring. I think this is something I've discovered. The culture of experimentation is something that needs to be brought into these companies real hard. Again, if you think about the old muscles you are flexing, it's like deliver this by that time done. Here, no, I have to figure out myself. So I have to, like a kid would learn something, like you fail, you fall, and then you learn, and you get better at it. But this is a culture, again, because experimenting means failing, means being happy with it, means okay with the fact of failing as long as you understand why, as long as you get better. So yeah, these are the things you can do. Data, culture of experimentation, these are the real things that are making a real change, actually.
And how to explain for your team the difference between outcome, output, impact? What is your tips?
Because we're talking a lot about that. Like it's really something that we've brought, that we've tried to bring at Decathlon, is sort of be outcome driven. And first, like you have to explain a bit what is different between output and outcome. And really simply, like we used to take former roadmaps, which is okay. Output driven is like you have a date and you have this feature to be delivered by that date. Okay. Outcome is that what are you trying to solve and what is the effect on the problem to solve. And what is interesting is sometimes you'll figure out that your product is actually bad at this. So if you're continuing into the old mode, you might just want to improve that product that by design is not the answer to your problem. And that's so mind-blowing. And when you open it up to say, well, you know what matters is driving this objective, and then you can take whatever route. So maybe this is this product, maybe this is something else. You said it earlier, sometimes about killing features, not adding them. Whereas before, since you have to be productive, it feels that the more you add to it, the better, right? Like the more bang for your buck. Whereas when you think only about the outcome, which is like what is the business results, for instance, or the user results that you're trying to drive, whatever, right? You don't really have to explain how it happens there, I guess, because at the end of the day, what matters is that you reach your objective. So it really opened it up.
Great.
Thank you.
A lot of practical advices on the product culture.
Very interesting.
I hope everybody enjoyed it among our viewers. I think it's time to play a bit, Jean.
It's time to Agile Cries. Okay. Yeah. So now you can log in. You can log in now using the QR code or the link on the Twitch chat. Log into the Slido for the quiz.
Yeah. And Jean, is there a prize for the winner?
Yeah, we have a prize for the winner. The winner of the quiz will be able to win 3 days physical training in Paris. Provided by We Academy. There are 2 possibility trainings. So either the training to become a PM or more business oriented training for PM, senior PM. So you can log in into the Slido. I don't know, François, if you... Yeah, so there are 2 training, and so yeah. Okay. So we just attend the audiences in the Slido. If you want to play or to tell us or comments, do not hesitate if you want.
There will be 10 questions. We are still waiting a few minutes, a few seconds for people to connect. We have about 10 connected players for now.
So we have 10 questions for the Agile quiz. We have a lot of people today.
I'm surprised the training is not in Peru. I mean,
sorry for that. It's a private joke. Let's wait 10 more seconds and then we'll start. People are still connecting. And I repeat, there is a big prize for the quiz.
Yeah.
People will be able to attend one training provided by the We Academy. And can you explain us what is the We Academy, Jean?
Yeah. It's a part of WeVoo, dedicated for training product people. And we have created almost 6 modules for product training. So product training, the base of the product management, the product management for a business oriented, and also for the product design, product data. So we will share all the tips we have to do the best product leader and manager for specialist focused or design data, and also generalist product management.
And if you want more information about the We Academy and all the trainings, you can reach out to Jean directly on LinkedIn. He's the one. He's the one to contact.
Okay, so we can start, I guess.
Let's start our quiz with the first question.
So let's go.
What is the odd one in this list? Quel est l'intrus? You have the choice between 2, 24, 8, 13. And this is a tricky one. Thank you, Jean, for this weird question.
I like this.
So what is the odd one in the list?
This is probably the only one in the Agile quiz I'm going to get right.
Oh, I will put a wrong answer on my side.
You have 20 seconds.
Yeah, and it's over.
Yeah. So
next question.
Okay. The Agile Manifesto is... Le manifeste Agile is 3 pillars, 12 principles, 4 values, 12 pillars, 4 pillars, 12 principles, 4 principles, 12 pillars.
So.
And the result is 4 pillars, 12 principles.
Yes, and I did not correct the first one, the previous one.
Yeah.
These were grades on the Fibonacci sequence previously for the first one. Next one, what does the acronym INVEST means for a user story? Que signifie l'acronyme INVEST pour une user story? Iterative, neutral, versionable, environmental, short time frame, independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, sizable, testable, independent, neutral, versionable, estimable, sized, and I forgot one word, time frame. And the second one is the good one. 83% of good answers on this one.
So the next one, what does A that has been added to the AARRR framework mean? Que signifie le A qui a été ajouté au framework AARRR devenu AAAARRR? So it's arrival, actionability, availability, or awareness. It's a new one for this framework. So yeah, the good answer is awareness.
Next question. What is the recommended size for a Scrum team? Quelle est la taille recommandée pour une équipe Scrum? Is it 9 plus or minus 3, 6 plus or minus 3, or whatever, as long as the team delivers? And the official right answer is the second one, even we could debate with the third one.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I was sure you would. I'm on your team and that.
So the next one is for RICE. What does the acronym RICE mean? Que signifie l'acronyme RICE? So Risk Improvement, Customer Engagement, ROI, Important Client Effort, Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. Yeah, the last one is the good question. The answer.
Next one. Que signifie le terme Kaizen? What does Kaizen mean? Is it about perfection? Is it about continuous improvement, amélioration continue? Or is it about continuous delivery, livraison continue? Yes, continuous improvement, the second one again.
Mm. Next question. What are the steps of the feedback loop described in the book Learn Start Up by Eric Rice? Quelles sont les étapes de la boucle de feedback décrite dans le livre Lean Startup d'Eric Rice? Build, test, measure, build, test, learn, design, test, build,
Or the last
emphasize, or the last one. Yeah. Second one is a good answer.
Which of these data approaches does not exist? Laquelle de ces approches data n'existe pas? Data informed, data driven, data inspired, data framed. And yes, data frame does not exist until now. Maybe it will.
I think we just created it.
Yeah. It's a brand new approach.
It's a brand new approach, the best one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I think it's the final question.
Yeah, final question. What is the prioritization method that allows to estimate a large number of tickets in a short time? Donc, quel est le moyen de priorisation qui permet d'estimer un grand nombre de tickets en peu de temps? Donc, hard quotation, extreme estimation, extreme quotation, or extreme programming. Yes.
And yes, this was the final question. So we should be able to see who's the winner of today's quiz.
Who's the winner?
This is Nico. So
10 out of 10.
Nico had a perfect score.
Nice.
Congratulations,
Nico. You can reach out to us directly on Twitch or on LinkedIn. You can contact Jean or myself, and we will come back to you to check this training that you won. 3-day training with Jean. Great. I think it's time now to speak about our partner. For this season of After Produit, we do have a partner. This partner is Product Board. Let's watch a 5-minute video about this product.
We've always been inspired by those who genuinely care about making products that matter. They've shown us it's excellent products that make excellent companies, and we believe the product managers behind them deserve a dedicated system to support their critical work. Yet for far too long, product teams have been stuck with a jumble of tools. They're flooded with user feedback, but struggle to capture it all in one place, so they risk missing opportunities. With no system of their own for managing their feature ideas, product teams live out of an issue tracker, so they're losing the big picture. Spreadsheets lack structure and make feature prioritization a black box. And product roadmaps made in PowerPoint? They're outdated the moment they're shared. So, what's the alternative? We need to replace all those disconnected tools with one system. A system of record for product management. A system that automatically consolidates all that valuable feedback floating around in other tools, so your product team can prioritize the features customers really need. A system that offers a holistic view of all your feature ideas, standardizes prioritization, and ensures product objectives support company goals. A system that provides dynamic roadmaps that can be tailored for different audiences, yet always stay up to date, so everyone is aligned around what's getting built next and why. and a system that integrates with the solutions you're already using to keep everything in sync and improve your existing workflows. Just like CRMs brought sales into the modern era, we believe product management systems like Product Board will do the same for product. They're helping us reimagine how we build the products of tomorrow, and they'll help your organization make products that truly matter to your customers. We can't wait to see what you decide to build next.
Okay, so let's talk about product habits. I would like to talk about the product habits. So I have one product people don't decide their future features.
Mm-hmm.
They decide their product habits. And their product habits decide their future features. So, what are your 3 personal daily product habits? Matt?
I don't know if I have personal daily product habits, but I definitely have worked with a lot of teams and a lot of companies, and I've observed some pretty consistent behaviors among high-performing product teams.
Okay.
The first one, which was surprising to me, but is probably the single most impactful habit I've seen, is sharing incomplete work with each other. So in low-performing product teams, people share presentations and they present at each other. They say, here's what we're going to build. What do you think? And the engineers say, well, I think you should go back and do this. And they go back. It's very transactional. The highest performing product managers I've worked with show up with something just written on the back of a piece of paper. They say, what do you think about this? And they let the whole team shape it together. So I think that there's this tendency, product managers can be insecure people, right? It's like, what are we even doing here? We don't even write code. Like, does anyone know or care what I do? Am I going to get fired? And I think there's this tendency sometimes to try to show off our work and be like, look, I made a PowerPoint presentation. Look, I wrote a 100-page product spec. I'm a serious, fancy, important person. But most of that is wasted time and effort for your team and ultimately for your users, right? If you're like, that 100-slide PowerPoint deck you made isn't delivering any value for your users or for your business. It's something you did for you. And that's not good product management. So one of the main things I've been coaching product managers on is working small and incomplete. So I actually have a website I put up at onepageonehour.com where product managers can pledge to spend no more than 1 page in 1 hour on anything before they share it with their team. So there's no more going off somewhere and saying, I'm going to spend 3 months coming up with our product strategy. I'm going to spend 2 weeks writing the spec. No, you work small, you work incomplete, and you bring it to your team and let them shape it together. Because when multiple people shape the feature of the product, multiple people are invested in the feature and the product. They care about it. They really want it to succeed. So that small thing of sharing incomplete work with each other has probably been the single most impactful habit I've seen healthy product teams develop. The other one is retrospection. I am not a dogmatic person when it comes to Agile, but I think that retrospection, whether or not it is in the place of a formal retrospective, is so important. When I wrote a book about Agile called Agile for Everybody, and I interviewed a guy named Jeff Koss who runs a textile manufacturing company in Seattle. And I was told, oh, Jeff is amazing because he uses Kaizen. I was thinking about this when I saw the Kaizen question. He uses Kaizen techniques and he runs a profitable textile manufacturing company in the US, which nobody thought you could do. And I called him and I said, like, what are your secrets? Tell me all the processes you use. And he said, it's not processes, it's reflection. He said, here's the thing people don't tell you about continuous improvement. Continuous improvement means being brave enough to continuously admit that you could have done better. And most people aren't cut out for that. It's really hard to do that, to look at your team and say, I could have done better by you. I may have harmed people who look to me for guidance and for their livelihoods. Continuous improvement is really difficult work and requires emotional work and culture change and a degree of vulnerability that not every organization is prepared for. So I think that in keeping with what Sébastien was saying about flexing those muscles, that muscle of retrospection is one that really gets stronger over time. And when I've worked with teams that have retrospected over time, they get more comfortable being honest with each other even when they're to a new team, like it's almost like being in therapy. I know people who've been in therapy for a long time are much more comfortable talking about their feelings. People who've been in retrospectives for a long time are much more comfortable talking honestly about the way they work with other people. So I think the sooner and more regular and more committed you can be to that retrospection cadence and that retrospective process is really, really, really important. And the last thing, which is another very tactical thing, every team I work with now, the first thing we do is we make a communication manual, which answers some very simple questions around how quickly do you expect an answer over email? How quickly do you expect an answer over Teams? What are your working hours? What does urgent mean to you? And it's been amazing to me how often I've worked with teams that say that they're low trust teams for these big reasons, and really it's just that there's a miscommunication. I dealt with this with one of my business partners in the States, where I was walking around in Portland and my phone started beeping and beeping, and she had left like 50 comments on a Google Doc that we were making together. And I started panicking, and I said to my friend, like, I'm so sorry, I've got to stop. And I called Trisha, I said, Trisha, I'm so sorry, I can't deal with this right now. And she said, I don't expect you to deal with this right now. Like, why would you think this is urgent? I'm just busy, but this happens. And I was like, well, but you left 50 comments. She's like, why do you have alerts turned on for Google Docs comments? That sounds like a horrible idea. I said, wait. So she's like, no, when I leave a comment, I don't expect you to respond. Huh. So she goes, no, if it's important, I'll send you a text.
You just needed to know it.
Right. So being more clear and deliberate about communication is, again, one of those low-hanging fruit. It's not complicated. It doesn't involve business outcomes that are outside of people's control. It's something that teams can start doing right away that I've found increases trust, lowers miscommunication, and just leaves people feeling more comfortable working with each other, and is also a sneaky way into getting people retrospecting and talking more, because in those moments they can start to say, oh, well, actually, when you sent me that email at 11 p.m., like, which I don't know, I mean, I gather that doesn't happen quite as much in France as it does.
It does.
Okay, well, but again, I think that in a lot of cases, those big culture changes happen through those little tactical steps. And over time, you see the way people work with each other start to realign, and you make more space for people to express themselves and be who they are and work effectively with each other, and more space for different people to work in different ways with each other. And I think that's when you get a really magical product team.
Any addition to this top three?
Yeah. So thinking about it, I'll come back to the kind of like the triptych, data, user, business. I will increase that to stakeholder. So data, you talked about habit, right? And I remember I had one advice. It sounds crazy when I'm gonna start this, but I got advice when I got my first baby. One of my very good friends, when this baby first said, you know what, you have to create habits to keep a healthy couple, because a kid arriving in your life is gonna ruin everything. So you have to spare a night a week, like a week a month, a week a year, and a weekend a month, to a weekend a trimester, for a healthy relationship. I like those habits. So when it comes back to product, when I think about data, every time I like the coffee data, snackable data, main course data. I've called it this in my own brain. So coffee data is the one that I'm looking every morning, drinking my coffee. So this is something to just take the pulse of the product I'm responsible for. Like, how is it doing? You know, what happened yesterday? The snackable data is the thing I might want to do like every month or every 2 months, where like, okay, I'm gonna go a little deeper into, okay, I saw trends or something I want to check, or something I've started to check daily that now I want to go a little deeper. And then the main course is the big deep dive, the things where you'll need like data analysts and much more resources to go like super deep into it. So keeping a healthy habit with this, understanding and knowing which are each of those. What is your daily data, your coffee data, what is the snackable one, and what is the main course one. Second one is on user. So I mean, the higher up you go into product roles, the less time you spend with your user. That's kind of a reality, unfortunately. But I remember at YouTube, product team had those like little booths at the entry of the whole building, where you can bring users and try new stuff. Similar to what you just said, like you have something unfinished, something you want to try, you want to get the eyes of a user on it. So finding an habit to say, okay, how many times am I spending time with my users, and making it a habit, making it something where, I don't know, maybe it's the first Thursday of the month or whatever. It's how the frequency will depend, because you can't say it's going to be every day. Realistically, it won't. It's even hard to make it every week. So find the right balance, but make it a habit. Like spare into your agenda that moment where I'm going to talk to a user, whatever about. I will figure it out as I go, but I need to talk to my user. And another one, which I think I'm going to extend that to stakeholder, I want to put two things in there. Product manager is a cornerstone of multiple practice, right? You have engineering in there, you have design in there, you have business in there. And most times you're as good as a PM as your ability to understand all of those perspectives and to understand all of those points of view. And they're not happening on weekly meetings, or most of the time they're not happening in weekly meetings and on monthly meetings. They're happening when you meet the people behind it.
Yes.
So make it a habit to meet your counterpart and your stakeholder on different format. Go meet, if you're a CPO with your CTO once in a while to get a lunch together, like I'm trying, I don't know if Fouad is looking at it, but we try to say like once a month we have like a lunch together where we sort of take a time apart to really talk, really think, and often discussion goes in very different directions. So take time. And it's the same with your business stakeholder, it's the same with your design stakeholder, with all the rest. I think in my context, business is important. Like we're changing a bit the roles, the things are moving. And if you only stay onto like this very highly, work-related environment, like you're going to miss out on something. Sometimes you have to check the pulse on them. Like, how is it going for you? Like, now that we're doing this, how you feel? Like, how's it going? And boom, it will open up. So make it a habit to talk in different contexts to your stakeholders. And the last one, I want to slide that in, meet new people. You guys are a representation of it, and you too. Like, product management is a lively practice. It's changing, it's evolving. There's people that teaching you stuff every day, and people who are practicing stuff that are changing every day. So, and this is maybe the hardest one. Spare time in your agenda. I don't know, again, once a month, once a quarter, whatever seems feasible. But you say, I want to meet someone new in my practice. I want to listen to that podcast. I want to do that meeting with whatever, and I'm just connecting on LinkedIn and say, hey, I want to talk to you. Most people will want to do it. Most people are happy to meet new people, most of them. But this is the harder thing to do, because oftentimes you're so into your day-to-day, especially as a product manager. It's a busy role. It's a role that's super tough. It's really busy. And sometimes you will hardly find like, but how does it gonna add up to me? Like I'm better off spending that extra lunch or working or having lunch with whoever. I think in the end it will matter. At the end, it will matter, because this will bring you new perspective that will extend your reach in terms of how you understand your own role and grow into your role. So if I come back, data, stakeholder, user, meet new people, these are great habits. It's a lot of them to stick in, but you got to find a way to do it.
I do have a new question from the chat, and it's again from Violette. I think you have a fan, Matt.
Bonjour, Violette.
Matt, you sound so passionate about product management and agility. Do you apply the principle of agility and the method of product management in your personal life?
I think I do. I think this last record I made with my friend was definitely an iterative process. It was really interesting, right? Because we made a point of not talking about the record at all. We just sent files back and forth. We just sent music back and forth. And our commitment was to do whatever we thought was best for the product, essentially. So I would send him a drum track and he'd edit it, or he'd delete half of it, and he'd send me a piano track and I'd edit it or delete half of it. And I think I had a moment, he and I met for a coffee afterwards, after we were vaccinated, and we could talk again. And he said, man, you deleted some of my favorite things. And I said, yeah, you deleted some of my favorite things. And we said, but every time it got better. And I felt like in that moment, I had learned the kind of radical non-attachment that good product management teaches you. That ability to say, if it's right for the product, if it's right for the outcome, no matter how hard I worked on it, it doesn't matter. It's not about how hard I worked. It's about the thing that we're creating and the effect that thing has. So it was really fun for me to take some of those lessons I had learned. I think there's a lot of lessons about ego death and about humility that come from product management. And bringing those lessons into my creative practice has made it a stronger practice. And I'm really grateful for that.
Another question is that if you follow frameworks or any methods, a lot of the described product activities is about rituals, ceremonies, whatever you call it, which can so easily become boring. Retrospection every week, every sprint, whatever. What would you suggest to make all these kind of ceremonies and rituals not boring on the daily life?
So there's two things I recommend. Number one is always asking your team, what is the purpose of this ceremony for us? I used to have, when I started doing Agile product management, I was told you have to do a stand-up. And so my team had these awful stand-ups, and we had one engineer who would like show up late and was just kind of being difficult about it. And during one stand-up, we were going around saying blockers, and he was like, I'm blocked on this. And he was kind of smirking. And I said, what's so funny? And he said, I've been blocked on this since 10 minutes after yesterday's stand-up, but I guess I didn't tell anyone because that's what the stand-up is for, right? And I was like, oh, we probably, maybe this isn't the speed at which we're working. This might just not be the right cadence for it. Should we just mention blockers on, the second you're blocked, just tag it on Slack? And we did that rather than having a daily stand-up, and it worked for us. I've worked with other teams that have had a daily stand-up where the only question they ask each other is, how are you feeling today? Because for that particular team, the purpose was for them to align with each other as humans and see who needed more support and who had more capacity to spare. So I think asking that question. And the other thing I love to do is deprivation studies. So if a ceremony, if you're not sure about it, stop doing it for a week or two and see what you miss. And that'll probably help you figure out what shape it needs to take.
Good advice.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, so I think the easiest way to say it is to make it your own. And to do so, there's a few things you can do. Having other people to run it. I love your example about checking on people. I remember I was doing some ceremonies a while back, and I was just going after one after the other. And the other time I realized, okay, I need to understand how we can do them better and what is the best way to improve them, that having other people contribute and change them. So I had other people to run it. And the very first time, the person who came and ran it did that. He said, well, how are you feeling? And I realized that person did that because he knew I couldn't see, but he knew the team were struggling and they needed that question to be asked. And that's only because I brought a new perspective to run it that it sort of changed it. So make those rituals your own and rotate, have other people run it. It's not only about asking questions, just do it. Just do it the way you want it. And you know, the people who are smirking on the back, or you can tell, next time they're just gonna do it. And you see that they will, if they participate in it, they will sort of shape it slowly by slowly, and it will sort of slowly become your own little ritual that may change in terms of frequency, in terms of whatever, because at the end of the day, this is a framework. It's made to be shaped. I think that's the big thing is does that feel that this is your own? Do you feel that this is your own team owning it, or is it something that you're being told to do?
Okay. So the principal advice is to adapt regarding our team.
Yeah, I think people forget the most important part of the Agile Manifesto, which is the preamble. The beginning of the Agile Manifesto says we are uncovering better ways of building software by doing it and helping others do it. It doesn't say we figured this out and you can never change it. It doesn't say these are the perfect methods that we're handing down from on high. And it's an invitation to participate in a movement. It's saying look, we understand that different teams are going to need different ways of working. These are the values and the principles we believe in. But the whole point of it is that this is a community of practitioners uncovering new ways of working together. And it's always really sad to me when people, when I was writing my Agile book, it got sent around to a bunch of reviewers, and one person was like, you can't publish this book because it says the whole product team can interview users. I was like, hey, excuse me? He was like, no, it's very clear that only the product owner is allowed to be. And I was like, says who? This is made up stuff. People made this stuff up. 21 years ago on a ski weekend, people made some stuff up while they were sipping hot cocoa, and now we're like, you have to follow it. And they're changing their minds too. Jeff Sutherland just said to stop doing estimation. The guy who everybody was citing as the reason we have to do estimation was just maybe we shouldn't do estimation. And it's because people learn and change. And the idea that you have to follow these things to the letter is just deranged to me. It doesn't make any sense.
One last question. according to you, what will change for PMs in the next 5 years?
What will change?
Yes. It's a tricky one, I know.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to figure out which one I want. So I have no idea. First of all, I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't. I think, but the practice is changing. So the practice is changing in a way that, let's take one example with automation, for instance, with things being more and more automatized, especially in the whole e-commerce world. I think you'll have your hands freer and freer to work on the discovery, on the not the most exciting, but the part that you all should be built for. I'm hoping that we're going further towards that direction, that you'll be able to do that more. Yeah, I think that's maybe one thing I see, but then I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea where this will evolve into. What I know is that, yes, automation will probably have a strong impact onto how your time will be freer and freer to be spent with users. Like if earlier when I told you about spending time with your user and stakeholder, it seems impossible to you. I'm hoping that the role will evolve to a time where it's going to be your life, where you're just going to be spending your life. So where we're going to be able to change the ways of working. I think this is something important. And maybe, I don't know if this is a France-US thing. I only work for one French company, but I feel the ways of working are a little different. The length of meeting, the whole, everything that goes around you, do actual work. I'm hoping that with ways of working evolving, with automation being something better and stronger, with dev team and engineering team that will be even more responsible for the outcome of what they do too, you'll be able to spend a lot of your time. And what I said earlier in terms of habit will be a thing of the past, that it just be your job. Your job will be to just be with your users, be with your stakeholders all day long and really shape your product from there. I'm hoping it will go that direction.
Great.
Matt, any?
I mean, I agree with all of that. I hope that, I hope we get to the point where we're doing more meaningful work and less nonsense. I think that unfortunately we keep inventing new nonsense to keep ourselves busy with, but I'm seeing a point where more and more of the product managers I talk to are saying, look, I'm tired of being upset that my company doesn't do product the right way. I'm tired of feeling like there's some secret out there I don't know. I'm just going to do the best work I can. And I think as we have more product managers learning and comfortable working within those constraints, the constraints themselves are going to shift. And we're going to have more empowered product teams and hopefully company leaders who see what that more empowered approach can bring to their businesses. So that's my hope, is that we'll get to a point where, I don't want to say by lowering our expectations, but by shifting our expectations, we'll actually get somewhere much better.
Yeah. Personally, I find it really exciting that we are basically shaping this new job, product manager, product owner, you can call it whatever you want. It's a changing job, and I find it exciting that in 5 years it won't be exactly the same job as today. So hopefully it will go in the right direction.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Sébastien, for all these precious and practical advices.
Thank you very much.
We have one last topic, and it's time for a quick jingle. Matt, you recently published the second version,
second edition
of your book called Product Management in Practice. Could you tell us a bit more about it? Why did you decide to do a second edition? And why should, I guess, every PM in the world read it?
Sure. So the first edition was published in 2017. And obviously the world has changed a lot since 2017. So much more of the work we do is remote and distributed. I think the discourse around product management has changed a lot. There has been more of a focus on discovery. There's a lot more high quality information out there. And honestly, I just learned a lot since then. There were some things in the first edition of the book where I thought, my thinking has really evolved past this. And some things that I've learned from doing the consulting work I've done where I was like, I really want to share these experiences with people. So the timing felt right. And the book had slowly, I think it's been a bit of a cult book in that it found its people slowly, but it's spread a lot through word of mouth. It's a book that product managers tend to recommend to other product managers, which I'm very proud of. So I reached out to O'Reilly, to my publisher, and I said, I think it's time. And they said, yeah, let's go for it. And I did a whole other round of interviews with product managers and got some new stories in here. This book is probably, it feels much more substantial than the first edition. I wasn't sure before I got the physical copies of the book. I was like, oh, did I really need to do that? And I went, wow, it's so much bigger than the first edition. I must have done a good job, which I know is exactly the kind of vanity metric busy work that I advocate against. But yeah, I mean, I think the reason I recommend this book, it's all just stories of real things that have happened. It's stories of the messy real world work of product management. And what I hear from people who read it is, I thought I was bad at my job until I read your book. And that's really the nicest thing I can hear from people. It's like, gosh, I thought I was spending too much time having conversations with people, or I thought I didn't understand this thing because I didn't want to work in these frameworks, or I thought I was, I didn't own the roadmap enough and I wasn't enough of a visionary and I was just facilitating. And, I think we have hit a point in product management where, the archetype of a good product manager, which thank you, Elon Musk, for destroying in the last couple months, was like this visionary, like, I'm in charge of everything and I'm going to decide what to do. And honestly, those are the worst product managers I've worked with. The best product managers I've worked with are thoughtful and open and facilitative. And honestly, I feel like those aren't always the people who get rewarded and promoted. I think we do have a tendency to, I've interviewed for jobs at big tech companies where they've asked me questions that only an overconfident bullshitter could answer. And my answer was, I wouldn't even think to answer that. There are people who know how to answer those questions. And if I worked in a product management role, I would ask somebody who actually has earned expertise in that, rather than pretending I know how to answer a question I have no business answering. So really my passion project with this book is to reclaim the human side of product management and to put a different vision out there for a way of doing product that's more collaborative, that's more thoughtful, that's more generous, that's less egotistical, that still delivers business and customer results, but that does it in a way that involves the whole team and leaves the whole team feeling empowered, rather than product managers becoming, little tyrants because they feel disempowered in the rest of their work.
And without making any spoiler, what is your favorite story in there?
Oh gosh, there are so many. I mean, the foreword by Natalia is amazing. She tells this great story about just dealing with that type of overconfident product manager. But I think my very favorite story, there are nice pictures in here too. I like pictures. I interviewed somebody who works at the New York Times, and the story she gave was like, at one point in my career, I went from a more empowered role to a less empowered role. And I spent the whole time just being upset and being angry. And I wasted so much energy in that situation. There'll be times in your career where the constraints you're working within change, where you go from a place where you have one set of constraints to a different set of constraints, where you go from a place that has a more mature product culture to a place that has a less mature product culture. And I wish somebody had told me, focus on your team, your business, your user, and your mental health. And don't worry about anything else. Like, stay focused on those things. Manage your own time, manage your own energy, pick your battles, don't overdo it. Don't overwork yourself for the sake of a company that really just treats you as labor and doesn't owe you anything beyond what they owe you. And I think that really resonated with me because I wish somebody had told me that when I started as well. There's a lot in here about time management. There's an idea out there that you have to work 60 hours a week to be a product manager, which gets repeated a lot. And there's a chapter in this book called No, You Don't Have to Work 60 Hours a Week to Be a Product Manager. Because I found honestly that when I'm doing my most effective work, I'm not working that much because I'm not doing things that are not adding value. That ability to really say, all right, here's what's important. There's an exercise I run with a lot of product managers where I'm like, stack rank everything you do in terms of how valuable it is to the business and your customers, draw a line, and everything that's outside of your work hours, cut it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Go to your manager and say, I'm going to delegate this or I'm going to stop doing it. But that trap of being busy it's a coping mechanism. It's seductive for people, right? It's like, oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm doing a good job. I'm so busy. And I think that so many of my favorite stories in the book are about learning to escape that trap and to see your worth as the impact you have on your team and your customers, not on how many hours you work and how busy you are.
Nice advice. At Wevu, we do have a reading club. They are actually meeting upstairs tonight. Do you have another book that you would recommend for PMs apart from yours?
Oh yeah, I mean, Teresa Torres' Continuous Discovery Habits is great. Melissa Perry's Escaping the Build Trap is great. There's a bunch of books that are not about product management that I think are really good for product managers to read. All the Patrick Lencioni books, The Advantage and The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team are really great. Getting into like more deep academic stuff, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, I think is actually really interesting for dealing with organizational dynamics, about how oppressed people become oppressors because they only speak the language of oppression, which I've seen happen in a lot of organizations. Those would probably be the ones. Oh, Petra Villa's book, Strong Product People, is wonderful. So generous and so thoughtful, so much great stuff in there. That's probably what I would start with.
Sébastien,
I would recommend any book around, I mean, this is my topic right now. We talked about it earlier. You said it's your first time doing a podcast in English. And for me, it has to do a lot with inclusion and with the fact of working worldwide and getting perspective from a lot more that you have around you. So anything that's around the culture mapping, all the books around the culture mapping, about how to adapt to new culture and get from new cultures. I'm sorry, I was trying to think about names of books, but I am missing them. You know, the co-author of the Netflix book.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about? She wrote a book, The Culture Map. Her name is
don't know it.
Don't know it.
The name of the book, but the name of the author that she wrote a book with a Netflix co-founder. I'm sleeping on the name.
We will find it.
The Culture Map. The Culture Map is a
after
book. Is a fantastic book about how to learn how to work with other culture. And I think if I come back to what I said earlier in advice of meet new people and grow your expertise and grow your scale, I think understanding how to interact with other culture is a very interesting part of what you can do and learn.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sébastien. Thanks, Matt. It was a great time. We are already out of time. It's time to wrap up. And first of all, I need to thank our guest, Matt Lemay and Sébastien. I put your name in French, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Mathieu Lemay. Thank you, Matt Lemay. Thank you, Sébastien. You were a great guest with really interesting insights on the product management. I hope everybody appreciated it. We also have to thank all our viewers on Twitch. Thank you all for connecting tonight. Thanks to the control room. We have 2 people that you can't see here. We have François and we have Alex in the control room. Thank you, Jean, for co-hosting that. And thank you to our partner, Product Board also. One quick information. Our next live will be happening on the 6th of December at 1 p.m. And we will have 2 absolutely wonderful guests. We will receive Frédéric Mazella, founder of BlaBlaCar, and Marc Simoncini, founder of Mythic. Right here, it's so exciting.
And I have one more information. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Join Matt, Sébastien and Marion for a meeting in Paris at Decathlon. So the topic is building an empowered product team. Register on the link in the chat right now and just...
I hope to see you there.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you,
very
Sébastien.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Have a
all.
nice evening.
Bye-bye.